Hi, I'm Jess, and these are some of the books that I fondly remember from grades K through 8. The first is Miss Nelson is Missing. What I remember about this book is that it featured this lovely, young, beautiful teacher who was very fun, but unfortunately, she had a class full of very misbehaved children. And the worse they were, the more frustrated she became. So Miss Nelson one day went missing and was replaced by this mean teacher dressed all in black. Some might call her ugly. The kids were not happy. And the more time that they spent with this new teacher, the more likely they were to kind of straighten up and get back into shape because they desperately wanted her back. So as you're reading the story, you can infer that Miss Nelson maybe has something to do with this new teacher's appearance. And at the end of the book, you realize when Miss Nelson is returned that she was actually pretending to be this mean teacher in order to teach her students a lesson. I really like this story. I like the twist at the end, and that's what made it memorable for me. The second story that I fondly remember was Where the Sidewalk Ends by Shel Silverstein. And what I liked about this was it was a collection of poems paired with black and white illustrations. And the illustrations were sometimes kind of absurd. They reminded me a bit of Dr. Seuss and the quirkiness of Dr. Seuss's poems without being overly Seussy. One of the ones I recall, not very well, but I remember bits and pieces, is about a crocodile that went to the dentist. And I remember that was so silly when I was a kid because crocodiles have such sharp teeth, and why would they go to the dentist? So it was that kind of fantasy and amusement that made the book memorable for me as a young reader. As I got older and we had required readings in elementary and middle school, I can remember reading The Pig Man by Paul Zindel. This is the first book assigned in English class that really stuck with me, I think because of the sad ending. Again, I don't remember too many details about this book. What I remember is that there were two teenage kids that were friends, and they start playing pranks on this older man and realize that he's very lonely. And this old man is kind of desperate for attention and to make relationships. And he treats them, even though they're children, much like adults. And they start having these fun adventures. There was a zoo outing. I remember Monkey. I think there were roller skates at some point. But regardless, by the novel's end, the pig man has died, and the kids are now very angry. They're bereft by grief, and they have to learn how to cope with these feelings of grief over this man that they never expected to befriend in the first place. Some of the books that I really enjoyed just for personal reading were the Sweet Valley Twins books and the R.L. Stine Fear Street novels. I was an avid reader growing up. I loved being outside, but I also equally loved just being inside. I could literally sit in a corner and read a whole book in one sitting. The thing that I liked about the Sweet Valley Twins series was that my sister actually read the Sweet Valley High books. She was 5 years older than me, and that's what piqued my curiosity. The Sweet Valley Twin books were more appropriate for my age at the time, so that's where I started out. And then as I got older, I transitioned into the Sweet Valley High books. And these books were centered around these two twin girls who could not be any more different. And it was interesting to see the different ways that they would respond to conflict. And even though they didn't always get along, they always came back together in the end. The Fear Street books was kind of my first step into the horror genre when I was a young kid. And dare I say, maybe those Fear Street books were too mature for me as a middle schooler, only because they could be a bit saucy at times. Like, I remember depictions of violence. I remember sexual relationships. Sometimes innuendos were made, but I could not get enough of those books. I would literally check out as many as they would allow me at the library and then come back quickly for the next set. So that's a little bit about me, and I hope that you enjoyed listening to my presentation. See you soon.